While the possible divorce of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Maria Shriver could become one of the costliest splits ever, the most interesting aspect may not be the size, but the complex nature of their personal, political, and financial relationship. My guest is family law specialist Robert Brandt. He's partnered with Feinberg Mindel Brandt Klein in Los Angeles. Robert, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
My pleasure.
Looks like Maria has retained prominent divorce lawyer Laura Wasser. California is a no-fault divorce state, but in this case, because of the high-profile nature of these people, it sort of negates that, doesn't it?
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. Actually, this is a community property state. As you mentioned, it is a no-fault state. And really the issue might be one of guilt, but the fact that Maria seems to be the sympathetic one in this situation does not necessarily equate to more dollars or more support.
Mm-hmm. There's been talk of, obviously early on, we would imagine there was some kind of prenuptial agreement here. Those typically, after 10 or 15 years, aren't enforced anymore. This is a marriage of 25 years. What do you suspect?
Well, first, I have to respectfully disagree with you in that regard, Scott. There's no rule that says a prenuptial agreement that's more than 10 years is unenforceable or all of a sudden invalid. It could very well be, if there is a prenuptial agreement, it could very well be valid, and it could be enforceable. And one would think, given the notoriety of both of these people at the time they met, Maria being part of the Kennedy clan, Arnold already being a well-established actor, that one or both of them would have discussed the possibility of a prenuptial agreement. And if they both had counsel, if there were disclosures, if they laid everything on the table, and there was a prenuptial agreement, the presumption is it is valid, and that would govern how they divide their estate and the issue of spousal support.
One might suspect that at the beginning of this marriage, the Kennedy clan might have said, Maria, just so you know who you're marrying here, that would probably play a part with a prenuptial agreement.
I would think so.
Now, with respect to what happened here, I mean, what he did, unfortunately, to say in these kinds of situations is not that unusual. He does, he embarrasses her. How does something like that apply here?
Well, I think that's a good question, because in this situation, what he did under California law is not unlawful. It's not unlawful to have an affair. We don't have a law about adultery anymore. We haven't had such a law for many, many years. However, when you're dealing with a scorned wife or someone who has been embarrassed, what that can sometimes do is prolong resolution, prolong settlement. I would think both of these people are intelligent. They're both going to have very competent counsel, and I would guess that they're going to be urged to try and settle this matter as quickly as possible. At the same time, if one of the spouses feels wounded, feels hurt, that could delay resolution, and that could increase attorney's fees and inconvenience. So that's something that certainly has to be considered.
Could one consider that perhaps they might choose some sort of mediation, just one, to not only, curtail the attorney's fees, but also to keep this out of the public eye as much as possible?
Oh, by all means. I think that the possibility of mediation, of retaining a private retired judge or an experienced attorney who specializes in mediation is absolutely something that might be on the table in a situation like this, and it would make sense. However, given the open nature of proceedings in California, the ultimate agreement might possibly be subject to public view. They might be able to work out an understanding where they can keep some of the data away from the public, and there's ways of doing that in a very intricate way and in terms of how a judgment is effectuated. But yes, one would think that they would be thinking about trying to keep as much confidential as they lawfully could.
It's been said that they sort of ran their household separately and that they had totally independent financial pictures going on. Does that apply in any way?
Well, it would depend upon whether there was a prenuptial agreement and whether the prenuptial agreement dealt with whether there would be community or separate property. If there was not a prenuptial agreement, to the extent each of them earned income from their personal services from and after the date of marriage, that would presumably be community property, whether they put it into separate accounts or not. The fact that one spouse has an account in his or her own name does not mean that the other spouse doesn't have an interest in that account.
Mm-hmm. And with regards to the boy who was fathered outside of their marriage, from a legal perspective, Arnold really has nothing to do essentially with the creation of this child. Is there any responsibility left for him here?
Well, once again, that would depend on a lot of circumstances. If at the time the child was born, the mother was married to the biological father and remained married to the biological father and did not take legal action against Arnold at that time, that could conceivably shield Arnold because there are certain rules and regulations. What we really don't know is whether or not there was some type of deal cut between Arnold and the mother, whether or not there was some type of payment made, whether there was some type of written agreement that would govern how she would not go public and what would happen if she did go public, whether or not she might lose certain benefits. So, there's always an obligation to support a child of your own relationship, but the question is, what is that relationship lawfully? Are we talking about a presumed father? Are we talking about the biological father? We just don't know at this point what the deal was, what the agreement was, because I think that would have a great bearing on the issue of who's responsible for child support for this child.
You're in Los Angeles. You've seen so much of this outside of the obvious size of this whole operation here. What is the most interesting thing to you about this?
The most interesting thing to me, and I think it's something that's been discussed in the last few days, is that this went on in their home for 14 years. This child must have been in that home. I'm not sure that we've heard all the facts. I'm not sure when all the data became known to Maria. But what surprises me is Arnold ran for governor on 2 occasions. One, that this did not come out. And if there was an agreement between Arnold and the lady or the mother of this child, at that point it was working because certainly she stayed quiet. And no matter what type of an agreement you have with people when you're talking about kids and money, ultimately it seems that the word gets out. In this situation, the word didn't get out until after he was already governor and already stopped being governor and retired back to his public entertainment life. So I find that to be the most unusual aspect of this, that we didn't hear about this while he was governor or running for governor. He must have been doing a good job, and somebody must have been a good job in working out an agreement in that regard.
Jane Seymour, who's an actress, came out today and said that she knows, I think she said something like she knows of at least 2 other children that he's fathered. It sounds like, this kind of behavior obviously has been going on for quite a while. He does have an unusual ability to keep a lot of this under wraps.
Well, again, we don't know. I don't want to say at this point whether he had any other children at all. I'm only commenting on, what the, millions of people have heard. So I can't really comment as to whether there's other children. But I will say this: we're talking about a very strong personality in Arnold Schwarzenegger. His personality as an actor, the roles he played, acting as a very strong governor. I think that's part of his demeanor, and it's part of his strength in not letting these types of things get to him, at least up to now. He's always personified strength and confidence, and that's something that's pretty difficult to maintain when this type of information is being disseminated to millions, if not billions, of people around the world. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does next, how he finally responds, what he says when he finally does answer questions about these specific instances, and all of the new allegations that are coming up on an hourly basis, if not a minute-to-minute basis.
Robert, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you.
He is a family law specialist in Los Angeles, Robert Brandt with Feinberg Mindel Brandt Klein. I'm Scott Drake, and you're watching the Legal Broadcast Network.